Friday afternoon at 4 p.m. in Switzerland. It's Space Café WebTalk time. Our Space Café BeNeLux by me, Chiara, Moenter, and Barzingi with Simon van den Dries will begin soon. Thank you for joining us for our talk today on creating a better future through space. As always, we really appreciate your participation and ongoing feedback, as it is really valuable for us and helps us to improve our work. And also a big thank you to ESA Space Solution for their great support for our event series. I know many of you are already familiar with our website, our bi-weekly and daily newsletter, and our Space Café podcasts. Actually, we just published a new episode of the Space Café podcast with Brother Guy, the head of the Vatican Observatory, and it is an absolutely remarkable talk with a remarkable person, so take your time to listen to it. We also keep our fan shop online open for you, where you can support us actively and become a space watcher. Edition 1 has really cool items for you, your friends, and the ones you love. And we need your support in order to keep our work alive for you. If you've missed any of our previous web talks, we have an archive available on our webpage in the events section and on our YouTube channel. And we will host our Space Café BeNeLux on a regular basis. And with that, I'd like to pass over to my co-host, Bano, and get this session on the road.
So, yeah, thank you, Chiara, and hi to everyone. I am Bano Barzingi. I am the co-host of the Space Café BeNeLux. And as mentioned earlier, next to me is Chiara, the co-founder of SDGs Space for All, and of course also the co-host. We are both students of the program Global Project and Change Management at the Windesheim Honors College in Zwolle. And just a few months ago, in October 2020, Chiara and I met up for a cup of coffee, and we started chatting about space and the universe, and eventually this moment never stopped, and it became a never-ending conversation. So we started our first Space Café in the Netherlands, and after that, we expanded our space cafes to the region of BeNeLux. So thank you all for joining us today on this journey. Today we will speak to Simon van den Dries, General Manager of Spire Maritime, and we're very honored to have you here actually.
Yes, thank you for joining us, Simon. So Simon is, as said, the General Manager of Spire, and Spire is a space-to-cloud data analytics company that specializes in the teaching and reaching of global data sets powered by a large constellation of nanosatellites. And Spire was formed by its founders from 3 countries scattered all across the globe, united by this common desire to build a better planet. There are actually 6 main location points on 4 different continents. And one of these locations we thought was very interesting, especially for our Space Café, and that is Luxembourg. So currently, the space and satellite sector in Luxembourg accounts for almost 2% of the country's GDP and has grown from essentially nothing 3 decades ago. And the country's space sector now consists of more than 50 companies and 2 public research organizations that cover various segments of the industry. And when Banu and I had our first talk with Simon, he actually explained to us that Luxembourg's position in space is bigger than the country itself. So could you elaborate a little bit more on this, Simon?
Yes, hello, good afternoon, Chiara, Bano. Yes, I can hear you a little bit weak, but I think it will get better over time. You're absolutely right. I think the slogan is Luxembourg is bigger in space than on Earth. And if you would take the overall percentage that Luxembourg has in space, then that's definitely significantly more than the surface area that they have on Earth. So it's a true statement. It is approximately 2% of the GDP. I think your Space Café BeNeLux is properly titled because I am working for this company in Luxembourg. I used to work before there for SES, which is the largest satellite company so far. I'm Dutch, so I'm truly BeNeLux in space. So on that side, yes.
Perfect. Can you tell us a little bit more about your position and your work at Spire?
So I'm the general manager of Spire Maritime. It's one of the 4 business units that we have in Spire. They are Spire Space Services, or 3S as we call it internally. which is about making customized satellite service, actually data services on customized satellites. So if somebody wants to make pictures on a specific way and they have their own optical lens, then we can include it in our satellite design bus, and we give just simply the pictures to them. You don't need to buy a satellite. We just give you the data on a customized satellite that somebody wants. So that's Spire Space Services. Then you have Spire Weather, whereby we measure weather conditions around the Earth, and also just on the edge of the atmosphere, so in space, space weather as well as part of the services. And then you have Spire Aviation, which is all about the aviation industry, starting with the location of all aircrafts. And then Spire Maritime, which is all about the maritime data industry, whereby we, again, track all 300,000 vessels in the world on a daily basis, on a every 10-15 minutes base. And we also measure all the maritime weather. There's a lot of other data services around it, but these are the four businesses, and I'm responsible for the maritime business in Spire.
Wow, yeah, that's a very wide reach. And what exactly does your position as general manager entail? What do you need to keep an overview of for the maritime sector?
Yeah, so we have about 45 people in the Spire Maritime business dedicated to that. We use a lot of additional satellite engineering resources and satellite construction. That is a shared pool, but dedicated to 45. And these people are responsible for making the data product, making sure that the satellite delivers what we want, do the marketing around it, do some dedicated engineering, do the sales, the partnering. So we partner a lot with other companies. Yeah, so basically the full responsibility for product and sales and everything that is around it.
The full overview.
Yes, general, as they call it. Yeah, general overview.
Yeah, so Spire is of course making use of these nanosatellites, as mentioned before, which is quite a unique feature because you guys have a network of nanosatellites. And we were wondering, how does this network of nanosatellites actually work? Could you explain a little bit more about that?
Yes. So our satellites are only 3 U's. So in the nanosatellite world, a U is 10 centimeter by 10 centimeters. So ours are 3 on top, which is approximately the size of a decent size of a bottle of wine. So it's approximately 30 centimeter high and then approximately 60, 70 centimeter width on the solar panel sides, on both sides. So when you fold them down, it's like a big box where a big bottle of wine is in there. And we put them into space, normally 3 or 6 at the same time in a launch. Mm-hmm. Not sure whether you have seen those movies, but it's beautiful. Yeah. They measure everything, right? They put them in a spring box, in a box. We ship them like that. They put them in the rocket, and then the spring pushes them out at 450 kilometers altitude. And they reach between 450 and 550 at the same altitude where the International Space Station is. Just about the same altitude where Elon Musk is, which is 20,000 satellites later on. So very crowded in there. And we have been growing this pragmatically over the last 7 years. What you want to do and what we are going to do is to have them as equally spread out as possible. Yeah. So not kind of, we took which rocket was available at which time and then we launched it. We launched them even from the International Space Station. So that's also, there are several launches from there, which means they go with the astronauts in the cargo. They arrive at the International Space Station and then they put them in a little window export. And the astronauts push them in, they press the button and you see them going. It's the same orbit. So that's what, and we have done that, but it becomes a little bit of a, not perfectly widely arranged, because if you're observing the Earth, you would like to do it very regularly, like every 15 minutes or every day at the same time, so that you can clearly see the differences and that there is no gaps between one detection and the next one. So we are continuously improving. We will launch approximately 25 satellites this year in addition. And the goal is to have every planet, piece of the planet, observed every 10 minutes at any location. And we need approximately 150 satellites for that.
Okay, well, that sounds very interesting, I have to say. So everywhere around Earth, there has to be a satellite. But how do you manage the navigation of all these satellites together?
Yes, there's a lot of things that you need to take to account to manage it. Well, ideally, you have a design and you start working from that. Then you have, of course, the ground stations. The ground stations receive the data. So we have about 25 or 30 ground stations in the world that once they fly over, and they fly over very fast, as you might know, they go from North Pole to South Pole in 40 minutes. So that means that if you watch out your window and you see them coming at the horizon, between the very far edge of the horizon to the other side, at most, it's about 6 minutes. So there's always some kind of building or tree maybe. So what you really have contact with the satellite is maybe 4 minutes. So in those 4 minutes, you need to know exactly where the satellite is, although you can predict it. You need to download all the data and you need to upload all the data. If you want to give some instructions, for example, there are some small maneuvers to ensure that they stay within the orbit. You need to send the command within that 4 or 5 minute window. Obviously, everything is prepared. It's not that this is all automated, so we know exactly what satellite is having which contact time. We call it contact time. And the goal is to have as much contact time as possible and to have as fast of a connection of data between that moment. The satellite itself can do quite a bit. There is, for example, an instrument that watches at the stars above the satellite. Most of the nanosatellites have that. And then by just watching at the stars, the satellite can know actually where it is at that same time. So it uses that information to keep on track. If anything would lost, satellite will be looking at the stars and know, okay, I need to go a little bit there or there's a bit on that side. There's no propulsion on our satellites. So the only thing that we can do is, we can do two things. One is a gravitational weight that we have in the satellite. And if you move that by a command a little bit in one direction, the satellite will move, of course, a little bit in that direction as well. This is one way to steer the position, the tilting. The other one is that you can do a little bit with the flaps of the solar wings. So you fold it 3 times. Even at 450 kilometers altitude, there's a little bit of drag. There's a little bit of oxygen still of the atmosphere. So by flying like this or by flying like this, you can remove the speed. You can change the speed. So these are a few examples of what they are doing.
And that is actually quite technical as well, let's say, Simon. And you as a manager, I really wonder, what is your strategic role in the coordination of these satellites then?
Well, fortunately, there are lots of people that studied for them. Exactly. They have it all. I mean, I don't need to worry about whether we have enough contact time with the satellites or what. As a general manager, I mean, I'm basically asking, okay, I want to see every vessel every 15 minutes anywhere on the planet, and they will build the best solution that is the most sustainable at the lowest cost. And they will give updates and say, okay, we can do this and we can do that. And there is new technologies coming up sometimes. So we listen to a few frequencies that vessels are transmitting. And there is a possibility with software-defined radios to listen to other frequencies. So we can do that. And the beauty about Spire is that we use the same satellite to detect an aircraft, to do a weather observation and to detect a vessel. But all of these three have certain requirements. And the engineers need to balance all of these three requirements. So if you fly over Siberia, there is less of a need to go and look for vessels, right? So you can switch that one off when you're over Siberia. Although not all the time, because there are rivers that we also want to monitor on that time. But you have to optimize these things. So maybe in once of every third orbit in the Earth, we only switch it on when it's over land. And all the time, we only do it when it's over ocean. And these kind of engineering decisions are taken in conjunction with our team.
Yeah, exactly. So you have an entire team, and you're like collecting the global radio frequencies and putting that in data, let's say, and you are managing these people. That is actually very great.
Trying.
Yeah, trying, let's say, indeed. I think probably you're doing a good job since you're still there, so that's a good sign. But could you talk us through, like, okay, what happens with the data when it comes from a satellite? What happens on Earth? How do you use that in operations?
Yeah, that is relatively easy. I mean, the one difficulty is that these ground stations are on very remote places. So they are literally in Antarctica on one. There is one on St. Helene Island, if you know where that is. It's in the Atlantic Ocean where Napoleon used to have his last days.
Simon the Great.
Yes, and you could argue, why do you put it there? There's one on Falkland Islands. And the reason for that is that, well, while you detect, for example, ships, and you fly over the ocean, particularly if you go from North Pole to South Pole, you need to download it somewhere. If you go across the Atlantic, there's nothing you can see except for a few islands. Now, on these islands, then you want to have a ground station. So you don't need to wait all the way when it made maybe to the South Pole, but you have something kind of in between. So we have a lot of these on islands, which is difficult to get there because we have our own people that travel there, that they install the antenna. Then you need to make it, hopefully it works. We are also working now with third-party antenna providers, whose people's business is only to build these antennas. But in the beginning, there was nobody that could work with our satellites. So we had to do the first 25 by Spire. But once it's there, then you need to assume that there is a good terrestrial connection, hopefully a fiber connection. That's the precondition. From there, the data enters into the fiber connection and it goes to the data centers. So we have contracts with Amazon Cloud Services, as well as with Google Cloud Services, and a few others. But the data goes straight into the data warehouses. And from there, we start to clean it, we start to translate it, we start to aggregate it, to refine the data. So there's a lot of things that happen. That's no longer the space engineers, that's the data engineers that take out.
Yeah, I mean, this is really fascinating to see how this all has to be translated. And also, I thought it was quite interesting to see how you have to change, or how these satellites combine these different areas where you have maritime, aviation, weather, the space services. But how does this also function? Because these are quite different disciplines. How is this interdisciplinary collaboration, and what key elements do you consider in this?
Yeah, so I think Spire deliberately wanted to be very diversified, so that if one business is more difficult, that you at least have other businesses that can complement for it, right? So it's a sound diversification strategy. On the other hand, if you look at an aircraft or a boat, from a technical point of view, they're both moving objects and they both transmit a signal. Everybody is located in its position, in its past position and in its future position. So there is a lot of similarities. There's a lot of customers actually that take all of these data sources. So we have got a customer that buys both the aviation data, the weather data, and the maritime data. I mean, large consultancy companies that are giving strategic advice to customers, and we have quite a few of them. They take all of our data, and they do a lot of things with it. So that's yeah, you will be surprised how much. A generic term, as we used to coin it as well, is that we are collecting Earth information. Anything information that we can detect from space, which is relevant for Earth, that's what we are offering. I think one of the other taglines that Peter, our founder, had was, we are here to collect data from space to solve problems on Earth.
Yeah, we've read that.
Yeah, we love that as well. it was great.
But then I'm also curious, like what kind of customer bases do you have? Now you've mentioned the consultancy firms that give advice and that like to take all this information, but do you see other big trends in the customers that you have?
Yes, we've got 5 in maritime, and that's also true for aviation. We've got 5 customer segments. In weather, we have got many, many more. But the 5 customer segments, first of all, you have the ones that are already in the business of maritime data. Maybe you know, if you are in boating, even in sailing or whatever, there is applications on your phone like marine traffic or vessel tracker, where you can go on the beach and you can watch your ships. These companies are our customers. So they take our data and they make an application out of it. So marine traffic, if you want to see that, it's actually collected not only by satellites, collected by satellites, and some of these companies also have terrestrial receivers at the ports, and they show the combination of the satellite data and the terrestrial data. So that's one group of customers. The other group of companies are really the shipping and the logistics companies. So people that own a ship, or the people that rent a ship or charter a ship or need to supply to a ship. And then there is a lot of companies that do trading. Not sure whether you know, but 90% of the goods that are in your room there are shipped by ship. They come from China, they go by ship most of the time. And therefore it's absolutely important if you're in trading, maybe not of furniture, but even that, but think about oil, iron ore, all the commodities. You need to track that over the oceans. And our data is actually for them very important to find out. If you do this well, and we help them doing that, you can actually know exactly what kind of availability is there of your goods. So how much crude oil was exported from Saudi Arabia to China, and how much is expected to go. And these traders, they buy our data to make the decisions on where to buy and sell oil. So that's the second group. The third group, if you want, applications, shipping and logistics, then trade. And then we've got finance and insurance. So insurance companies, they need to insure a ship. They want to know whether they are not taking too many risks. They want to check the vessel, whether it's not illegally going to countries where they're not supposed to travel to. They want to see how sustainable it is doing its travel. So sustainability is very important. It's one of the SDGs that we are indirectly supporting. So which is many vessels are not that efficient. First of all, they're very dirty. And second, they travel without really having a big concern on the environment. If you go to Rotterdam or to other airports, you will see a lot of ports waiting outside. The reason why they are waiting outside is because the port is full. And so it's the same as like if you will be in an aircraft, you go to an airport and you need to do circles before you land. That sometimes happens, but it rarely doesn't happen because the whole thing is properly planned.
Yeah.
So before you take off from your city, the destination is already cleared by the aircraft. So then it's perfectly scheduled. Now our data enables that as well for ships. So if you know exactly which ship is coming from where and arriving at what time, then you can schedule it. And then the ship can say, okay, rather than waiting 3 days in front of the harbor, I'm going to slow down my speed. I'm going to burn less fuel and I will be arriving just on time. So that's one of the things that we are doing as well with the ship. And the last one is government and security. So there's governments that are buying our data to protect their waters, to detect illegal facilities and to do illegal fishing. There's a lot of illegal fishing, billions and billions of dollars. People thought that they could be hidden in the ocean, but unfortunately from space, there's nothing hidden. So you can see exactly which Chinese vessel is fishing in a place where it's not allowed to fish. Yeah. And there's lots of customers like Global Fishing Watch, Ocean Mind, that these are NGOs that use our data to go after the culprits of illegal fishing. So that's it. Many applications.
Yeah, that has so many different uses. It's also nice to hear that there's so many aspects of sustainability in there as well.
Definitely.
We have a few more questions for in a bit. But the other thing that we were also curious about was in terms of partnerships. And you've already mentioned it a bit, that of course also with the data analysis and everything, there are partnerships involved. But also, how is it up in space when you have these different satellites? Because you also have other companies or space agencies that also have their satellites, or sometimes even network of satellites up in orbit. Do you have partnerships with these companies? How do you collaborate with them?
Yes, there's quite a few. So we want to be very much focused on our 4 businesses and with our radio frequency collection. We don't have, for our internal purposes, for example, optical cameras or RF cameras or radar imaging, and we do that with partners. So there is a number of customers, partners that are making pictures, and by cooperating, actually, we can then detect which vessel it is, where is it going, who the owner is, and if there is a malicious practice, if there is an illegal fishing, then we actually take the picture from our colleagues' satellites, and there's a radar image picture that you can take in the darkness and through the clouds to actually identify the illegal activity in there. So yeah, cooperation with other space companies, because it's a different steel. If you want to make a radar image, you need to have a much bigger satellite, because you need a lot of power to make actually a real radar image picture. And our satellites are only 4 kilograms. If you want to have this kind of radar image, you probably need something around 100 kilograms at least.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite different. Yeah.
Okay, so then you can really benefit from the pictures they, for example, can take. And do they in turn then receive like data from you, or is there some sort of exchange of information?
Yeah. We work together. I mean, many of these new space companies, they started at the same time, around 8-10 years ago. We go together. For example, we are working with ICEYE. This is a Finnish company. And together we have several products developed around what they call dark vessel detection. So a vessel is by legal requirement required to send their location every minute. But some of it, they put it off. And sometimes there are safety reasons. So if you go through the Suez Channel and there are pirates coming around, you can switch it off and you can say, I'm switching it off for safety reasons. But sometimes they do it for malicious practices. And that's when you want to have a dark vessel looking at the camera, what's going on there at that time. And we developed that together with ICEYE.
Oh, wow. That's really cool to hear. And do you have any like specific, or does Spire have specific selection criteria for finding these partners? Are there like a certain criteria that needs to be filled?
Well, we want to have the best. So that's an easy criteria. It's a small world. I mean, if you look at SAR imaging, there are maybe 4 companies in the world that are doing that today. Maybe there's a few others. So yeah, you want to have the best. You want to have the ones that is maybe close to you, which is having a partner. Obviously, we are not the only one. We also have a few companies that are trying to do similar things. So you team up with one, somebody else teams up with somebody else. Yeah, but we try to do it smart. We have a dedicated data partner manager that is nothing else than making these partnerships.
Okay, wow, very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So we spoke about what you mentioned sustainability a little bit just a bit ago. So on the subject of sustainability, it is of course very important to consider the SDGs agenda, as you already mentioned as well. For the audience as well, this agenda is a collection of 17 interlinked global goals designed to be a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all of us. So the SDGs were set in 2015 by the United Nations General Assembly and are intended to be achieved by the year of 2030, which is quite soon already, of course. So how is Spire connected to the SDGs, and how do you work together with these SDGs?
Yeah, it's not that they are really part of our overall corporate strategy, but I looked them up again, and I think, yeah, there are a few that are definitely resonating. Overall, I think the company is really founded on the belief that we want to make the planet better, that we are here for a purpose. We're not here to make profits, but we are here to actually make a better Earth, and also a better space. So I would think environment and water are very two clear SDGs that I can see that we contribute to. Environment start already with space debris. So Spire has been one of the founders of the Space Debris Foundation, which is everything to do with detecting what kind of debris we have, and then working together on policies for satellite operators and launchers to keep the debris to a minimum. So you will see and hear more about that, and this is one of the problems that you should put more attention on, I think, in your cafe, if you are really caring about that. Because, I mean, our satellites are very small. They burn up after 4 years, 3 years, there is nothing left. But of course, there are satellites that are 300-400 kilograms, that is a problem, and there are rockets that are a problem. I mean, everybody is very happy with Elon Musk that his boosters come back. But what they don't tell is that sometimes there's a big chunk at the very end of the part that still remains in space and is still orbiting right now, and he doesn't remove these things. And these are very dangerous, and is actually a problem in the future that is only getting bigger every time. Recently, we had this Chinese rocket, if you remember, what was coming down. It landed up, fortunately, somewhere in the ocean, but it could have well landed on your house. And there's nothing we can do about it. Yeah, so space debris is a very important thing. One thing that we didn't touch on yet, which is part of the weather observation, we look at the weather at space, in the atmosphere, but also the weather at the soil or at the ocean. So we can even measure the wave heights. We can measure the wave heights on the ground, and we can also measure soil moisture. And if there is one thing really important also in the SDG, then it's the availability of water on the planet. And by detecting how much soil there is, it's a bit of a complicated technology. If you want, I can explain it. But by detecting the soil, you can know exactly where the scarcity is and where's the danger of drought, where's the danger of fire. So protecting the water resources by measuring how much water is where is very important. And climate change, of course, in general, we are measuring the atmosphere on the ground, but all the way up to 70 kilometers altitude. And there's very little people that do that. If we want to understand climate change better, we need to do more measurements of data, and we are making a big contribution to that. So I think there was one of the colleagues that is in the weather team. He was awarded this week by Climate for Change, one of the programs from UN SDG as well, for giving his contribution about what Spire is doing in climate change. Yeah.
Awesome. That sounds really good indeed. Yeah, you already said like with the satellites, they actually after 4 years they're not very useful anymore. So how sustainable is that actually? Like, are these satellites then sustainable? Can we call them that, or are we still working on a more sustainable use of satellites?
Well, every object will die one day. Every object will die, right? So there will be always an end of life. There's nothing that will be perpetual in that. Right now, it's around to 3 or 4 years. I'm not sure whether we will make that much longer. 3 to 4 years, if you look at the technology, and 3 or 4 years from now, on board of the satellite, I mean, it has changed so much. Our satellites right now can do probably 50 times more data collection than the ones 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So the same design, but just with new hardware and new software, we can do 50 to 100 times more data than 4 years ago. So there's a good reason to continuously improve and iterate on them, because now we need actually less data. When we started with the company, we initially thought that we needed maybe several hundreds, maybe 300 to 400. Now we know it's not more needed than 150. Maybe we can reduce it to 100, just by being more efficient on these satellites. So we try to be as sustainable as possible on all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that sounds good. There are a lot of improvements if I hear it like that. So you also spoke about space debris. How is that for Spire? Do you track what kind of space debris there is, or how do you help to decrease that in a sense?
Well, we have several projects on that. So we launched our own initiative, but it's a bit of a political sensitive topic because nobody wants to burn their fingers on that, right? It's the same old problem that we had in the past with the oceans. Nobody is the owner of the ocean, so everybody thinks they can dump their stuff in there. And the same true is for space. Nobody owns the space, so every country puts their own kind of laws in there, right? If you know, our satellites fall, every satellite has a flag, just like a boat, and the regulation of the flag of your country determines what you need to do in space. Yeah. So we have actually 3 flags. We have satellites with an American flag, with a Luxembourgish flag, and with a Singaporean flag. And we are allowed to do different things by different satellites. So for example, we can download data over China with our Luxembourgish one, but we cannot do that with an American flag. These kind of things that you need to take into account. But space debris, therefore, it's a bit of a political sensitive thing. You cannot solve that alone. You can solve that by collaborating. So there is a collaboration agreement where Spire works with all satellite operators and all launchers to basically agree upon, okay, if we launch a satellite, why don't we agree that we only will go with rockets that will bring the boosters back, and maybe we'll also bring the first part back, right? This is kind of inter-company agreements that we are making to try to make the standard, rather than waiting for some kind of intergovernmental body to do that. And at the same time, we're working with governments that also have that aim. So we have won a contract. We announced that as well last year with the Austrian government, the neighbor of Switzerland. The Austrian government ordered 2 satellites that do nothing else than space debris detection. So we inserted several sensors in in our satellites. And that data is exclusively ordered and owned by the Austrian government, and there's universities in Austria that take that data, and they're doing through that data their contribution on reducing space debris.
Yes. Oh, that is interesting. So you're actually collaborating with the universities as well. So that is adding up on the future of students and the youth itself. And I think that is very beautiful. There's a question from the audience as well.
Yeah, we have a question from Mark Stokes, which kind of adds well to what you just said,
exactly.
Where it's asking, what do you see as the biggest challenge for operating in space as Spire does in the next 10 to 15 years, especially working around space junk and with all the competition of uprising companies?
Yeah, and of course the political sensitive.
The biggest challenge when operating in space for the next decade. Wow. I can do that from different perspectives. I would say, and that's me personally, I'm definitely concerned about the amount of objects that we are putting in the low Earth orbit. So there's 20,000 for Elon Musk. 2 years ago, Spire was the largest satellite constellation in terms of numbers with 105 satellites. That was 2 years ago. And then Elon Musk launched one with 64. Okay, we were still number 1. And then the second, we were already second. And then he moved on to thousands and thousands.
You know?
Right? I mean, he takes off. There is no comparison. I mean, you watch on a good clear evening from your house, you can see trains of these satellites flying over, right? You can see them with the naked eye. So to me, that is a big concern because if there is one incident happening, this will have a major impact on that entire orbit. And we will have a lot of time and money to recover from such an incident. So regulation, responsibility from everybody including the government that we might not like, is extremely important. There's a huge risk in there. I would say that is the biggest risk. Other than that, I mean, our satellites are relatively small. I mean, I can see a lot of upsides, right? Launching will be more reliable, it will be cheaper. The capability of the technology on board of the satellite is every time more powerful. It's like the Moore's law in space. The Moore's law was about every year, you know, the computer processing capacity kind of doubles. The same is true for the satellite technology. So every year the capacity throughput more than doubles. So yeah, I'm more positive than seeing problems. Yeah, that's my nature probably.
That's a good attitude, yeah. Yeah. It's definitely nice. And it very well leads into the last few questions that we do have. Because, yeah, it was mentioned before, really Spire using its data to do good on Earth. And Spire's vision is, of course, to use the data from every point on Earth to solve global problems and unlock human potential. And the last time the three of us had a chat, we also talked about Spire's dream to work on a multi-planetary level. And on that note, there's also a very interesting National Geographic documentary detailing the use of satellites and the dream to send them to other planets. And we were just wondering, how does that work? What does that dream look like exactly? Can you explain?
Yeah, I'm not sure whether it's a dream. I mean, we talked about it in the past, but more like, okay, what could we do next? I think just to make it clear, from an investment perspective, we will stay on Earth for the moment in the foreseeable future. That's really our main goal. But the expertise that we have on nanosatellites is particularly relevant, because if you would go to Mars or to once, it's quite easy to take with you a few of these nanosatellites. There are only 3.4 kilograms, and we can make them even smaller, right? You have even also smaller nanosatellites. But they can be absolutely vital in landing the larger pieces, in preparing the launch and keeping the operation going of the planet, also in observing these planets in there. So I think the technology that we are developing, for example, debris collection around Earth, you will have the same challenge later on with debris collection around Mars and the Moon, right? So what we are learning here on this planet can definitely be replicated. And the technology that we have on making satellite imagery and making detections of like how much moisture is there, what kind of gases are in the atmosphere of the planet, all of that you can measure also on these. So yeah, there's a lot of benefits on whatever we do here to replicate that later on in other planets. Yeah.
That's good to know. And then you say that Spire is first going to stay on Earth, but what are the next steps for Spire? What is coming up in the future?
Well, the big thing is that we raised capital and that we are going to the New York Stock Exchange. So the initial public offering is happening in Q3, so somewhere in August. Then you can buy shares in Spire. So that is a big thing that allows us to do a lot of more satellite launches and to hire much more talented people, which is, by the way, we are hiring a lot of people, young people as well. So that is really the big thing. It changes us from a small startup with a lot of enthusiastic people now to, well, being a grown-up company that needs to adhere to all kind of public stock exchange rules. We need to be very transparent in terms of our activities, in terms of our financial activities. So that's the main big thing. It will happen in Q3 and it will keep us busy definitely for the end of Q4. And then, yeah, we will see. And we want to be the best data provider for this planet. Yeah.
Sounds like a great goal. Yeah, on the subject that you just mentioned of looking to hire students as well, because we have a lot of students within our network. So maybe you can briefly explain a bit more of what exactly you're looking for and how people could come into this field.
Yeah, so we're still a relatively small company. So we are right now 300 people. We want to be 400 by the end of the year. All of our vacancies are always posted on spire.com, so you can see them there. We have people in 5 locations, mostly Luxembourg, San Francisco, Glasgow, Singapore, and Boulder, Colorado. That's where one of the main weather and environmental knowledge centers is of the world. So we hire in these 5 locations. By exceptions, we sometimes allow people to work remotely. And they range from a space launch engineer to a data engineer to a sales or marketing person. There's a wide variety of jobs out there.
Okay, good to know. So plenty of opportunities.
Yes.
Congratulations. And then we have one question that is a bit bigger, but we do like to ask it, which is, what do you see in the future of space? Regardless maybe of Spire, but how do you see space and space data developing?
Yeah, well, if you look very far out, I would say that the border between space and what is not space is going to be less and less. As a matter of fact, we are all in space right now. I mean, we're all in space. There is no really clear border. I mean, people, if you start to delve into where starts space, nobody really always agrees with each other. So you can think that we're all in space. It's just we become more aware of it. We start to learn more about it. We start to realize that we are just on a spaceship altogether, that we better take care of it. I certainly believe that my generation, probably your generation, will see human beings on another planet and really make this interplanetary species a reality that will happen. And that will change, the human beings forever. Once you are on another planet, you will have different kind of human beings, and the ones that stay here will be different as well than the ones that go somewhere else. So yeah, I see a lot of change happening, whereby space, the border between what space is and what not space is will remain.
Yeah, well, at the end, it's all one universe, and we're all bound together and interconnected. So I actually really like that you said that and that you mentioned that. Simon, we still have a question from the audience as well. So you talked about detecting problems as well, and detecting where illegal fishery is, for example. So one of the questions is, how can you detect legal versus illegal activities from the sky?
That's not that difficult, because we know the economic zones of every nation and every fishing. So, I mean, a bad example is, for example, the islands around Fiji. There's a lot of fish around the Fiji Islands, and you're only allowed with a Fijian boat to do fishing in Fiji. But we know, of course, if there is a Chinese flag, or let's take it an Australian one, boat coming into that moment, the moment that the Australian boat enters into the Fiji, we can create an alert area. And we say, okay, is this really legal or not? And then certain vessels, of course, have a permit, and many have not. So the local authorities, by knowing what kind of vessel it is, how is it registered by which flag, and then knowing exactly where they are in terms of the geographic zone, the economic zone, you can detect if they are allowed to enter or not.
Okay. Well, yeah, well, it sounds very simple.
I mean, that's the very basic. It gets a bit more complicated. If you go into fishing, you can fish with big lines, or you can fish with nets.
Yeah.
Right? And certain technologies are allowed and certain are not. But just looking at the pattern of the vessel, so if a vessel goes like this, then it's probably doing a net.
Yeah.
And if it goes like this, then it's probably doing a line. So there is an algorithm that automatically detects what kind of fishing technology is used. And then you can say, okay, in this zone, you cannot do net fishing. And therefore, if that pattern shows up, you immediately alert the potential illegal part.
Well, you make me very curious now, because the algorithm helps, yes. But when something illegal is detected, what are you guys doing about that? Or are you doing anything about it? Or, what happens then?
That's where our customers come in. So we have Yeah, it's Global Fishing Watch.
Yeah.
But also the US Coast Guard is our customer, the European Maritime Safety Association. All of these, they take our data, they go after the culprits. They do lots of things. They try to improve legislation. They have patrol boats. They have fines. They go after. And it goes very far. I mean, Ocean Mind, one NGO customer of us, they actually go and follow the ships that fish for the particular supermarkets. So Asda is a big supermarket in the UK, or Walmart. So they actually don't go after the fishing guy. They actually go after the supermarket guy that orders the fishing guy to bring the fish.
Ah, that is really, yeah.
That's very effective, right?
Yeah.
So that's how they do it.
Yeah.
And then if you're in the supermarket and you have some kind of certificate, then you can guarantee that it is properly legal seafood.
Well, that was very interesting. Yeah. And I'm happy to hear they're actually approaching the source instead of the fishery themselves. That would be very sad as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Those were all our questions. Thank you so much, Simon, for giving all these detailed answers and explaining these different systems. Yeah, it's a very fascinating world to dive into. So thanks so much.
Good.
Yeah, if there are no more audience questions, then I would briefly like to dive into the next events that we have coming up soon, just in case we've caught your attention. So we have a full set of next events. So next week on Tuesday, the 15th of June, at 4 p.m. CEST, we have 33 minutes with Professor Kazuta Suzuki on Japan's space policy, which will be very interesting. And then on the Friday of that week, on the 18th of June, we have Space Café Canada at 6 p.m. CEST, where Dr. Jessica West will be talking to Tim Kopra. The week after that, we kick off on Tuesday, 22nd of June at 4 p.m. With Danica Remy, who's the co-founder of Asteroid Day and the president of the Asteroid Foundation. So that's going to be really interesting. And the day after that, on the 23rd of June at 6 p.m. CST, we have Space Café Brazil, hosted by Ian Grossner, who I think is in the call today, which is really nice, who will be talking to a Brazilian diplomat, Andre Rippel, and this will be hosted in Portuguese. Following that, we will have the 33 minutes with Nicholas Minas on the 29th of June at 4 p.m. CEST, and the next Space Café Scotland on June 1st at 4 p.m. July 1st, sorry. So yeah, stay tuned. As always, we will post our events on Eventbrite, so be on the lookout. And also, we would love to hear your feedback, so please check in with us on Twitter, on Facebook, and on LinkedIn. And don't forget to sign up for our daily and bi-weekly newsletters. And if you want to treat yourself to something special, become a space watcher. Because we really appreciate your support. So take out your credit card and visit our fan shop at shop.SpaceWatch.Global. And I know I mentioned this a lot, but we do need your support to continue doing this work. So thank you to all the audience for your interest today, for joining us, for asking your questions. Thanks again to Simon for this inspiring talk and for being our guest. And thanks to the entire team behind the scenes for doing a great job week in, week in. And thanks also to ESA Space Solution for their great support. So with that, I hope you will stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you next time. And in the meantime, visit the website and follow us on social media. And don't forget, become a space watcher.